Hello and welcome. I'm Sophie Duca.
And I'm Simon Watt. And we're back.
Please join us for a brand new series of Ocean Witness. Great to be back, isn't it?
Yeah, good seeing you again, Soph. How's your lockdown been?
Oh, it's been up and down, but the cherry on the cake is that we still get to do this, even though it's 2 meters away.
Yeah, virtual high five.
But obviously, the real reason we're here is because the world has been through a lot in the past few months, and now it's more important than ever that we fight to protect our oceans.
The pole-to-pole expedition came to an end in March, but the Greenpeace ships have been out on the sea again, and we'll be bringing you exclusive reports from them over the coming weeks.
As you know, Greenpeace has been campaigning for a strong global oceans treaty that will protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030.
But this week, we wanted to look at the areas of the ocean that are already protected, so please join us on a deep dive into the world of ocean sanctuaries.
Coming up on today's show, we'll visit Mexico to see the flourishing sanctuary of Cabo Pulmo. We'll hear why not all spills in the ocean are necessarily a bad thing, and you'll get to learn everything you ever wanted to know about puffins.
But first, we're going to dive into the issue of paper parks. And yes, that does sound like somewhere you might go to, I don't know, ride in an origami roller coaster.
Sounds very flimsy. And actually, in fact, it is. This is the issue of paper parks, areas which are protected on paper, but are actually barely protected in real life. This summer, a team on the Esperanza went to give some paper parks some proper protection.
I am now formally requesting that no further deposits of this nature are made. I wish to warn you that those on board the vessel that continuing with this activity is a criminal offence.
Your message well understood and copied. Object, you can proceed.
Yes, we are standby.
We're Greenpeace. We're not going to be intimidated by the authorities. We're going to keep campaigning and keep taking action until we get the proper protections for the environment that we so desperately need. So the Dogger Bank is a marine protected area in the North Sea, and it's one of the most ecologically important parts of UK waters, as it's home to a vast array of wildlife, and it's an important feeding ground for animals like dolphins, porpoises and seals. The Greenpeace ship, the Arctic Sunrise, visited the Dogger Bank in June 2020 as we'd heard reports of destructive fishing taking place in the area. And we uncovered some really shocking evidence of destructive bottom trawling taking place in the Dogger Bank. And this is particularly bad because the Dogger Bank Marine Protected Area was set up to protect the seabed, yet there are many fishing vessels that drag bottom trawling gear across the seabed, tearing up everything in its path. And you could describe bottom trawling as like driving a bulldozer through a protected forest. And not only did we witness lots of destructive bottom trawling within the Dogger Bank, We also saw some vessels that were fishing illegally. They had their satellite tracking systems turned off, meaning that it's very difficult for the authorities to monitor their activities. It should be the government's job to prevent destructive fishing from happening within a marine protected area. So we decided to place a series of inert granite boulders at predetermined locations on the seabed with the intention to close almost 50 square miles of the Dogger Bank to destructive bottom trawling. As these boulders, which weigh up to 3 tons each, they will deter any fishing vessels with bottom trawling gear from fishing in the area, because if they did so, they'd risk damaging their nets. So after successfully placing the first 15 boulders, we set sail back into Hamburg to collect 17 more. But about 45 minutes into the journey down the river out of Hamburg, we got quite a heavy police escort and we were told to turn back by the police and return to our berth. You might need legal advice very quickly. We were boarded by German police officers. They wanted to question us about where we were taking the boulders and what we were going to do with them. They wanted to inspect them and photograph them. But when we gave them reassurances that the boulders were not going to be placed on the seabed within German waters and that they were destined for the UK, they were satisfied with that answer and they let us proceed. When we returned to UK waters, the crew worked tirelessly throughout the day to place all 17 of them safely in precise locations, and as nightfall arrived, the final boulder went in, meaning that the bottom trawling exclusion zone was expanded to 32 stone boulders on the seabed. We've protected what we can this year, but we're determined to keep fighting. We'll keep expanding our protected area if we have to, until we get the proper marine protection that our seas so desperately need.
It's just so disappointing that a government can, say all the right things and, make these areas to be protected, and yet it takes Greenpeace UK to come along and actually enforce it and do something.
Absolutely. And if you're worried about these boulders potentially damaging the seabed, this isn't the first time that rocks have been used to deter destructive fishing. Here we have some evidence for some rocks that were dropped off the coast of a marine reserve in Germany. And nature is thriving.
That's really incredible, isn't it? I love this one. That's the perfect fishy lockdown beard right there, isn't it? Yeah, it is incredible, isn't it? It only takes a little bit of protection and things recover. We just have to give it a chance. Now let's head to sunnier climes as we go to Mexico's Baja California Peninsula.
One criticism often levelled at ocean sanctuaries is that they don't take into account the livelihoods of the human communities that depend on the oceans. But at Cabo Pulmo, the local community got behind a marine protected area and they've never looked back.
En Baja California, en el municipio de Los Cabos, se localiza un Edén, el Parque Nacional Cabo Pulmo. En sus aguas reside el único arrecife de coral vivo y también el más antiguo del Pacífico mexicano. Es el hábitat de numerosas especies marinas y corredor migratorio de ballenas, mantas gigantes y tortugas.
La verdad es que hasta que comencé de nuevo a bucear estos últimos años en Cabo Pulmo, entendí por qué gente tan famosa como el oceanógrafo Jacques Cousteau nombró al Golfo de California el acuario del mundo. Es en el único sitio donde en un solo día de buceo se pueden ver tiburones, rayas, mantarrayas, peces de gran tamaño, cabrillas, pargos y un arrecife totalmente en un estado de salud increíble.
Por su riqueza y diversidad biológica, además de su innegable belleza, en 2005 Cabo Pulmo fue nombrado Patrimonio Natural de la Humanidad por la UNESCO. Hace 15 años, la región manifestaba los estragos de la sobreexplotación pesquera y turística. Gracias a la organización de sus pobladores, Cabo Pulmo fue decretado Área Natural Protegida Desde entonces, la población de peces se incrementó en más de 400%, convirtiéndose en uno de los principales puntos de buceo en México y en un importante receptor de turismo de naturaleza en el estado.
Éramos pescadores, dejar las redes y apostarle a la conservación y ahora dedicarnos al ecoturismo, yo creo que fue lo mejor que pudimos haber hecho y con esto podemos demostrarle al mundo entero que se puede tener una excelente calidad de vida viviendo de los recursos naturales sin dañarlos.
And to talk more about this amazing sanctuary success story, we're joined by Ornella Galley from Greenpeace Mexico. Hi, Ornella.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
This area seems to attract so many tourists. What exactly are they hoping to see?
Yes, well, Cabo Pulmo and the surrounding area is definitely an incredible place. Its main attractions are underwater, in fact, in the marine wildlife that inhabits permanently or temporarily this national park. So here you can find beautiful coral reefs and various species of fish, humpback whales, manta rays, predatory sharks, sea turtles, whale sharks, and many others. So these species rely on Cabo Pulmo for reproduction, feeding, and habitat. Cabo Pulmo is a remote place. There is only a small town of very friendly people who were mainly fishers, but now, in order to protect the area, they changed their way of living, reducing fishing, and now providing eco-friendly tourist services. And this decision is definitely paying off to them because now they make a living by promoting these sustainable tourist activities that has led Cabo Pulmo to become one of the most important diving sites in Mexico and a significant receptor of ecotourism in the state, in Baja California Sur state, in Mexico. So the benefits for them are huge, but also they care a lot about the environmental protection of their own area.
Could we dive a bit more deeply into what the people did to facilitate this change?
Well, back in mid-90s, locals themselves lobbied the government, particularly the state government, but also the national government, and successfully secure protected status for the reef. And also, these communities are still very active now because although Cabo Pulmo is already a protected area, there are still some threats that the ecosystem is facing. For example, as it has many wonders, it still attracts big and small tourist developers. And there are some attempts to establish new projects that can damage the area and its biodiversity. So the community and local NGOs keep denouncing these projects to stop them or to properly regulate them by the government.
This sounds like a paradise. It sounds like a great example. Do you think that other coastal communities can learn from Cabo Pulmo?
So these people have already had interchanges with other fishing communities to share their experiences in order to support them in their own processes. And we're talking about communities even outside Mexico, from other countries in Latin America and even Europe. For example, together with Greenpeace and other NGOs, some persons from Cabo Pulmo travel to Spain to denounce the big tourist complex that was intended to be built some years ago near to Cabo Pulmo with Spanish financing. And in collaboration with the Spanish people there, they show how this huge resource affects nature everywhere. So this interchange of experiences is happening already.
Thanks so much, Ornella. See you later.
Bye.
Bye, guys. It was a pleasure.
Now, ocean sanctuaries are often criticised by big industrial fishing companies as getting in the way of profits or even our food supplies. But actually, they can be really good news for fish stocks because of a phenomenon known as the spillover effect.
And one of the places where we can see this spillover effect in action is the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
think we did pretty well, Water.
And now, joining us all the way from Canada, it's Professor Rashid Samaila, who is a researcher in economics and fisheries. Hello, Rashid.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
We're looking forward to learning about the spillover effect. It's not something we've become familiar with. And we know there's been quite a bit of pushback from the industrial fishing industry. I suppose, just briefly, what actually is the spillover effect?
The spillover effect is a biological phenomenon. If you protect part of the ocean, specific to the ocean, no fishing or very limited fishing, what happens is the animals actually prosper. They grow bigger, they lay more eggs. And as they get bigger, some of them spill over. They move into the parts of the ocean that you fish. That is the spillover effect. The eggs also float into these areas. The little fishes, the larvae, the juveniles roam out and get into the fishing area. And this is the mechanism through which, by protecting and putting sanctuaries, you actually help the fisheries through spillover effects. And this is so beautiful, actually, because if you harness this very well, you are able to protect biodiversity, because when they are there, you don't mess up with them. I call the sanctuaries the fish bank for the world, actually. So it's like where you pack your savings and allow it to grow, so that when it gets to some level, you can draw some of it to keep your livelihood going. That is the same concept here.
Well, it goes to show it's really a win-win situation. What is good for wildlife ends up being good for people. So why is it so hard to spread that as an example?
Yeah, and this actually, it baffles me a lot myself. I mean, you cannot be a friend of fishes without first being a friend of fish, you know, and spending on nature is actually spending on people, because without nature, there will be no show. Imagine an ocean which had fish before. Obviously, there will be a lot of activity. All the fishing jobs and revenues will come in. But once the fish is depleted, all these things will have to stop. So no fish, no fishes, no fishing jobs, no fish dollars or pounds. There's no seafood for us to eat. So I think everything boils down to the short-term, long-term dynamics. I think the reason why you have the industry pushing back is because they're looking more short-term. Short-termism, that is what is causing that. Because if you are fishing in a place and you turn it into a sanctuary, initially some fishing has to be reduced, right? And that is what they're kicking about. But all the research we have done shows that you just need to be patient a few years, and then you start getting much more fish than you get now. The sanctuaries help you to lift off from the current misery to a better place. It's just that they can't wait, and that is where the problem lies.
Do you have specific examples of places where you've seen the spillover effect benefiting fishers?
Oh yeah, you look around the world, there are several examples in Spain and Europe, but the one I'm going to give you, I think is quite interesting. It's there's a village, a fishing village in Tanzania. It's called Mafia Village. And the fishing was just dwindling. The stocks are gone. They are getting less and less. Then a group of NGOs came in and tried to put together a sanctuary. And I will give the villagers this. I think the NGOs that came didn't work with them. It was almost like it was imposed on them. And they didn't like it, but it went through. And a few years later, they were actually catching more fish, bigger fish. more valuable fish, and they acknowledge that. They said, yeah, this thing is helping us. Whereas if you are cool enough, you are patient enough, if society finds a way to ease the short-term pain for fishers so we can move to this higher place, yeah, there are examples.
Sounds like it's all about having long-term vision and maintaining this balance between protection and fishing. What are the ways that you think that this could be achieved?
Once I understood this and we did modeling, you know, one of the things I proposed, I said we should close the whole of the high seas to fishing. This is 2/3 of the world's ocean. We catch less than 5% of our total fish catch from there. These boats go in there, they have to search. It's a large area. They waste a lot of energy and pump out CO2 and catch little fish. Close that place up as a fish bank for the world. They will spill over and you get the economic benefit. Already we have biodiversity benefit. And what is more, you also get equity, because at the moment, about 10% of the countries, the big fishing nations, you're talking about China, Spain, Korea, take about 70% of all the catch value in the high seas. We close that. The fish can move into Guinea-Bissau's waters and the locals can get fish to catch, you know, and help their livelihood. It's just beautiful. I mean, so we can actually use the spillover effect to a lot of good.
Thank you so much, Rashid, for telling us about the spillover effect and giving us your time.
You're most welcome.
Now it's time to head to the galley, that's ship speak for kitchen, of the Arctic sunrise. Are you much of a cook, Simon?
I like it. Other people have different views.
I heard that you made 15 different types of curry during lockdown.
Yeah, everybody needs a project.
It's quite excessive. So, could you feed a hungry ship crew while sailing the high seas?
They would rather drink seawater.
Well, to show us how it's done, meet assistant cook Alice Potter.
So do you see the piece of ice I'm looking at?
It's straight on.
Yeah, and to the right of that, you see some heads, and they're moving.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
My name's Alice. I'm the assistant cook.
Back to the galley.
I've been a volunteer for Greenpeace for nearly 2 years now, and this is also my second volunteer trip on board the Greenpeace ships as well.
Today in the galley we're serving some vegan meatballs, which I'm rolling now, made from leftovers from a previous meal. We've also got some salads, we've got some fried potatoes and some pumpkin soup as well. And yeah, we'll see if this is enough. We'll kind of add to it as we go. Cooking at sea can be really difficult, especially when the waves hit. We've had a few accidents on the floor at times. Yeah, when things are not stable, and yeah, it's really difficult the first few days on board when you get the seasickness as well. Cooking for 30 people can be different for sure. I'm used to cooking just for my family usually, so this is a few more people than I'm used to. But yeah, the atmosphere is great. It's really cool to be around people that have the same values and are really geared up to stand up for the environment and yeah, really want to make a change. Every day is different, which is really cool as well.
A few days ago, it was announced that it was the second lowest sea ice minimum that's been recorded, and it kind of brings to reality the impacts that we're seeing of climate change and that things are really changing rapidly. It's like been one of my it keeps happening every few minutes actually. As we speak, as we sit here, this is just more and more ice that's melting. It's two sides, the beauty and the kind of horror at the same time. I think it's easy to think that it's happening far away, but wherever we are in the world, it'll have a dramatic impact, and yeah, so we really need to protect this landscape. Sorry, I just this little bird. Yeah.
Incredible. I think those vegan meatballs look pretty good.
Yeah, not only a great chef, but able to talk to the camera while the world melts around her. Anyway, now it's time for Creature of the Week. And this week's creature is the puffin.
Aww.
This is a bird that has really benefited from these marine protected areas.
To tell us more, we reached out to the urban birder David Lindo. He's currently out in the field, so friend of the show and Greenpeace UK's head of oceans, Will McCallum, caught up with David a few weeks ago.
So David, we've caught you just before you head off into the field. Can you tell us where you're heading?
Yeah, the field is an interesting description actually. I tend sometimes to head straight into cities because my moniker is the urban birder, but my next port of call is next week in Scotland, where I'm leading a socially distanced tour for about 9 days.
And you're in the UK quite a lot, and you're the patron of somewhere called Lundy Island, which is just off the coast of Devon in the UK, and it's famous for its puffins. And you've been lucky enough to spend some time amongst those puffins, and we'd love to hear just a bit more about them.
They are one of those really classic birds with a beautiful painted big bill, which has given them the name elsewhere in the UK of sea clown or sea parrot.
I've seen them off of Handa in northwest Scotland before. I've always been amazed that such tiny birds can spend so much time living out at sea. How is it that sort of they're so well adapted for living out at sea for that amount of time?
It's interesting, the puffin, even though its wings aren't that long, they do travel fast distances. I mean, when they're feeding young, they can travel between 30 to 100 miles away to find food. And they beat their little wings so fast that sometimes they can, it's been calculated, they can beat 400 times a minute, flying. So that's incredible.
So they can fly, they can fish, they can swim, they can also dig. So is it right that they live underground? Is that right?
Yeah, their breeding preferences are the sort of grassy edges of slopes, or on the slopes themselves, the edges of cliffs. If there's a rabbit population on the island on which they inhabit, because they are predominantly found on islands, obviously islands tend to not have predators on them, so they would use an old rabbit hole. But yes, they can dig their own chamber to raise their single puffling.
Puffins are very famous for their, slightly oversized beaks, and we see these pictures of them where they've got sort of 5 or 6 of these tiny little fish hanging out. And I guess we just wonder, how on earth do they keep all of these tiny fish in their beak?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you often see those pictures, as you say, Will, with the sand eels or whatever, small fish. And apparently it's a really efficient way of bringing food back for your young, because many other seabirds swallow 1 or 2 fish whole, bring it back and regurgitate, whereas this is several fish at the same time. And I think I'd rather be a puffling and have some clean fish to swallow rather than having someone vomit down my throat. I think I'd rather that, personally. But it's believed that the fish are held in place by serrations in the bill, backward-facing serrations, which means that the bird can fly down, catch fish, and add it to the stash, and still dive underwater and fly with such grace actually underwater after their sand eels or other small fish, and to collect more to bring back to their young.
And so coming back to Lundy, which has been a marine protected area in the waters around it since 1973, how is that good news for puffins? How are marine protected areas sort of helpful for puffins, do you think?
Well, one of the main things is that because they are marine protected areas, the marine life is protected. It means that when they go fishing, there's less chance of there being not enough food supply. So that's a good thing straight away. On Lundy, the fact that they've cleared the rats away is also a very great thing. The problem is, though, once these birds leave that reserve or that biosphere and move off into the general ocean, that's where they hit the pollution and the lack of fish generally. It's a tough scenario because there's lots of seabirds that have declined phenomenally over the last 20, 30 years.
But I'd like to end on something more positive and just ask, do you have any other sort of favourite thing or favourite memory about puffins or actually any of your travels that you'd like to leave us with?
When you go to Shetland and you go to Sunborough Head and you walk along the coastal path there, and you can actually stand on the path and be maybe 3 or 4 feet away from puffins, or just stand there. So they make amazing photographic subjects, number one, but also it's just lovely to be so close to a puffin. And I lead tours in Shetland, so I see so many people just going, oh my God, this is absolutely, I could die now. You know, it's that kind of thing. You know, they're just beautiful looking birds. They evoke a lot of emotions in people. And unfortunately, they're not as common as they were, but there's still places where you can still see them, of course.
Thank you very much, David.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And that is all for this week. Remember that we need to put pressure on governments around the world to agree to a strong global ocean treaty at the UN. Check out the links below or above this video to find out how you can get involved.
We thought we'd leave you with the soothing sights and sounds of a beautiful ocean sanctuary. This time, it's the Pelagos Sanctuary in the Mediterranean Sea, and it's home to some carefree, frolicking dolphins. Until next time,
bye.